great to be here, and I would like to thank the organizers of GAVI. Well, you know, Africa has diverse areas of investment, but I think one of the greatest area of investment is actually agriculture. People will be surprised that I'll be talking about agriculture. We're also in agriculture, you know, we're pumping quite a lot of money, even though we're very focused in terms of, you know, sugar. But areas of minerals, when you talk about solid minerals, we have not even really scratched the surface. And all what we need to do is just to make sure we process our own minerals rather than exporting the raw materials. Because it doesn't make sense exporting the raw materials because we are not really adding any value, we are not creating jobs. So what we are doing is that we are shipping the raw materials.
We're seeing that happen with the cashew nut industry.
Cashew nuts, cocoa, you know, so what we are doing is that we are actually exporting jobs out and then importing poverty into our continent, and that has to stop.
Right.
So, I mean, in the areas of our own investment, yes, we have actually invested heavily in the last couple of years in oil and gas, which is almost, we spent between the fertilizer, refinery, cement, sugar backward integration, in 7 years, we actually invested over about $25 billion. So why are we doing that? Because we are doing that to show confidence. Right. Because if we don't really move by investing in our continent, it will be very difficult for other people to be convinced
to come and invest on our continent.
So we need to tell them that, look, there is quite a lot of things happening in Africa, and sky is the limit. Right. You know, and yes, of course, there are some few issues here and there, but those issues are solvable.
Right, and you've also spoken about the need to build a robust manufacturing base in Africa, right? What do you see as some of the immediate priorities to accelerate that transition towards manufacturing and value addition across the African continent?
Well, value addition, if you look at all what we are doing as a group, is actually transforming our raw materials into finished goods. Let's say, for instance, cement. Our own cement, when we started cement, Nigeria was only producing 1.9 million tons. When we moved into cement, we started, our first factory was 2007. And by today, Nigeria is in production of about over 55 million tons. So we started from scratch, but we made sure that we are not only self-sufficient, we are also a major exporter of cement, which we did. Right. And then we look at fertilizer. There's no way, when you talk about Africa, the biggest thing about Africa is agriculture. So now, how can we talk about agriculture being the biggest in Africa if we don't produce our own fertilizer? You know, so in the last couple of years, in sub-Saharan Africa, we had zero fertilizer production, which is urea mainly. And both ourselves, we now built 3 million tons capacity. There's also another company, Indorama. Indorama also built another 3 million tons capacity. So we're able to make Nigeria self-sufficient, and we're able to serve other African countries, and we export up to US. Then you look at it now, we look at oil, petroleum products. And we realize that in the entire African continent, there are only 2 countries that don't import petroleum products, which is Algeria and Libya. Right. And that really pushes us into saying, okay, you know what? We need to save our continent, but where do we start from? So we have to start from home. Right. We started from Nigeria, and now we built about 650,000 barrels per day refinery. Right.
Yeah, before we get to oil, and I want to talk about green energy, because that's a theme that we're hearing a lot about, especially here at the United Nations this week. I wanted to ask you specifically about some of the measures that you think we need to accelerate. There's a lot of hope on the Africa Free Trade Continental area, of course, to alleviate that, but it doesn't seem to be making movement. How do you think we can accelerate on that?
Well, to accelerate on the free trade, First of all, we need to do a couple of things. One of the things that we need to do is to make sure we liberate ourselves and allow free movement of people, goods and services. Like what I keep saying, today somebody who is holding maybe even American passport or British passport, he has more access to countries than me as an African. So, unless we're allowed to mingle among ourselves, because if I cannot visit you, I can't do business with you. So what we need to do is really to remove all these restrictions about visa among Africans. It's starting to happen,
though. It's starting to happen. We're seeing it happen.
It started to happen, but maybe only 3 countries. You're talking about Rwanda, I think Benin, and which is the other country. There are only 3 of them. That's okay, fine. Africans, they can just come, visa free. But if I'm an investor, okay, I say that there's an African country, for example, where we invested $650 million, but I still do need a visa as an African, despite that we have the highest African investment. So it doesn't make sense. What we need to do to make sure that we unleash the potentials of Africa is to remove all these issues about, yes, because thank you. Why are you talking about no security? Because majority of all these guys who are working with different governments, they are talking about security. No, there's no risk in terms of security because you can see Rwanda. What happened? Did they have any security challenges? No. So those guys who normally make trouble among Africans, they don't need a visa.
Right.
They don't. You look at all these people who are bandits, Boko Haram, people in Mali, people in Burkina Faso. Those guys, they went through the borders with not only themselves, with their tanks.
Right.
So they don't need a visa.
We need to remove those barriers. So I was saying, Alaji, one of the themes we're exploring at Gabi and at the UN this week is Africa as a solution for clean energy. Looking at how we accelerate Africa's rapid transition to sustainable and renewable energy sources. But you have built one of the biggest oil refineries on the continent, just outside of Lagos. What motivated you to venture into this multi-billion-dollar business at a time when the world is tilting towards renewable energy? And how is that, you think, part of the solution in the progress towards transitioning?
Transitioning is true. Well, transitioning doesn't happen in one day. Transitioning will happen over a period of time. And if we are going to move from where we are straight into renewable, it's not going to happen. We'll die. Because right now we have 600 million Africans with no power. Okay, so what do we have? We have natural gas, we have coal, we have other things. So what we'll do is that we have to do both at the same time. Because finding replacement for oil is going to take a long time. Do you know what we produce from oil? You produce over 6,800 items from oil. Most likely this your address might be from oil. So we need to address those issues. Right now, we're having several queues. We don't have fuel. If we don't have fuel, what do we do? So we have to start with the refinery.
The world has to transition from oil and gas.
We are also transiting. We are transiting from the fossil fuel. Some of our vehicles, we are changing them to compressed natural gas.
Where do you see yourself playing a role in this energy transition?
Well, we are there. We're always the first movers. We will definitely invest in the renewable energy. Now we have achieved setting up a refinery, we have achieved setting up fertilizer, we have achieved setting up a lot of other industries. So we will lead. You see, one thing that we have to get clear is that nobody will develop Africa but Africans.
Yes.
Okay, so no matter what, we must lead before other people are going to get convinced to join us. So we all have to risk our money. I would have decided to invest most of my money in Microsoft, Google, Tesla when stocks were very low. But I decided that no, I need to make my continent great, and that is why I pumped so much money into the continent.
Which leads me perfectly into my final question, because we're running out of time. You've been ranked again this year by Forbes as Africa's richest man. Looking beyond the financial returns, of course, what legacy do you hope your investments and your entrepreneurial endeavors will leave on the future generations of Africans? We had Africa's youth voices just a moment here.
Well, you know, to me, really, I think anytime when people address me as Africa's richest person, I really get a little bit uncomfortable or upset. Yes, I'd rather be called somebody who creates the future of Africa. I invest a lot in Africa, and why am I investing a lot? Is to show people that yes, it is doable, and we Africans must lead in terms of this, and we must make sure that this our youth, we find jobs for them. And that is, I think, the kind of legacy that I want to leave. The legacy that I want to leave is to make Africa self-sufficient for what we consume.
Thank you so much. Alhaji Aliko Dangote, thank you. A round of applause.
Thank you so much.
My thanks and gratitude. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on the Unstoppable Africa stage.
It's a great pleasure to be here.